schedule this upcoming NBA season. That could be because trades, beef, rivalries, different sort of answers that we have going on. So you guys definitely don't want to miss out. Make sure you watch the entire video, or tune in for your favorite team. In yesterday's video, if you didn't know, I'm posting every day in December, so make sure you just come back, check out my channel every day, or just hit that subscribe button. We are almost at 5K, which still blows my mind. I can't believe it's so close. I'm scared it's not gonna happen, but yeah, 5K. Yesterday we talked about my predictions for this upcoming season's awards. So MVP, Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, you get the gist. We talked about those, so if you want to check out that video, make sure you check it out. And yeah, make sure if you like the video, and before we get into today's video, if you guys want my next video to be my Eastern and Western Conference playoff prediction video, I know you guys really love that video. If you want my newest video tomorrow to be my Eastern and Western Conference predictions, make sure you guys slap a like on this video, give this video some love, let me know you want to see it. It will be a written out video the way you guys like it, and yeah, I think it'd be a lot of fun. So slap a like on this video if you want to see that tomorrow. Now, without further ado, let's jump into tonight's video. Now, obviously talking about every NBA team, I cannot go into too much detail about every single game, so sorry if I can sort of skim past some of the teams, some of the things if they're not that very interesting to me, but this is a Bleacher Report article again, and this was written by Andy Bailey back on December 5th, and I'm obviously going to be giving my own input if it's not a very good answer in my opinion, or we can go into a little bit more depth about what or why they said their specific answer. So this is the game every NBA team is circling on its 2020-2021 schedule. With the first team in alphabetical order, you guys already know this, a very popular team apparently on my channel, the Atlanta Hawks. With the Atlanta Hawks, they have February 3rd, and that is a game against the Dallas Mavericks. And I'm assuming, without even reading the article, it's about Trae Young versus Luka Doncic, which, in my opinion, is the dumbest sort of clash they're trying to make happen. That makes no sense whatsoever. Sure, I know they're traded for each other, but again, it still doesn't make a lot of sense for me. It says here, Trae Young is never going to escape the comparisons to Luka Doncic. That's the inevitability that sometimes comes with draft night trades. Young is already an all-star, but Luka looks like a potential MVP candidate. He just finished 4th in last season's voting. So, do I think this is right? In my opinion, it's obviously going to be a very important game because they are a top talent in the NBA. Don't get me wrong. In my opinion, I think a very good game to watch against the Hawks would be a team like the Boston Celtics. I think would be the best one. We all know the Boston Celtics are going to be a very championship contending team for years to come. But it seems like they still need a little bit more time to grow and develop. If the Atlanta Hawks could beat a team like the Boston Celtics, that would be a very good measurement on how good they could be potentially in the upcoming years. So I'm gonna say, in my opinion, it would be not specifically the Boston Celtics, but a team that is already an established Eastern Conference powerhouse. I think that might be the most important game for the Atlanta Hawks, not a game against the Dallas Mavericks, because Trae Young versus Luka, I don't agree with that sort of clash they try to make. Up next are the Boston Celtics, and their most important game apparently is December 25th, Christmas Day, against the Brooklyn Nets. And you know what? I will agree with this, not only because it is against the Brooklyn Nets, a team who was arguably the maybe favorite coming out of the East, with now a very good-looking Kevin Durant. During his preseason games, he looked pretty normal. He looked pretty readjusted. He looks very fine. Same thing with Kyrie. I'm assuming that's probably going to be a spoiler. I think that might be the Pelicans one. So if it's not Charlotte versus the Pelicans or Charlotte versus the Timberwolves, I think those are pretty cool ones to think about. Definitely Lonzo versus LaMelo. I'm definitely watching that game. Next up, we have the Chicago Bulls, and we have the Bulls versus the Knicks, February 1st. It says here the Chicago Bulls are running it back with mostly the same roster as they had in 2019-2020. They have their eyes on a playoff berth, but they are certainly not locks. Interesting. I don't know why they would pick the Knicks if that was the case. Again, I think like the same thing with the Hawks. I think their big time matchup would be against a definitive team. So I think a good matchup would be maybe the Bulls versus the 76ers. I think might be a very good one. A team that's obviously a very established team, very favored a lot of years to make it out of the East, but not really at the tippy top tier, Bucks, Nets sort of tier, Celtic tier. So I think the Bulls versus the Sixers, I think will be the most important game for them, because it's nothing too crazy where, if Chicago beats the Milwaukee Bucks one game, you think, oh my god, well that's just a bad game from Giannis, or that's a bad Bucks game. But if they go out and beat the 76ers, that might be a little bit more convincing, because it is a team that they could definitely see sometime in the playoffs. They match up very well, and I do think the Bulls have a great chance of making the playoffs. So I think that would be a very good matchup, in my opinion. Next up, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers, and their game is December 26th, the day after Christmas, and that game is Cleveland versus the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, Drummond versus the Detroit Pistons, to be more exact. It says here, Andre Drummond's shortcomings seem to get a lot more of attention than his strengths. That's very true. Dude didn't even make top 100 in the ESPN's ranking. Disrespect. In today's game, it's difficult to design a functional offense around a center who doesn't make threes and isn't terribly efficient elsewhere. Also probably why he didn't make the top 100. But I do feel like that's very true. I don't think Cleveland played Detroit at the end of last season after Drummond got traded, so I think this would be a good game to see Drummond sort of dominate, show Detroit what they could have, what they should have probably kept, and maybe should have traded more to get rid of. So I like this a lot. Next up are the Dallas Mavericks. This one you can probably guess. Their most important game of the season is December 25th, Christmas Day, against the LA Lakers. That is pinpoint on the dot money. Exactly what I was thinking. Obviously, you have Luka versus LeBron James. Luka obviously coming for the crown for best player in the league. And obviously there's Giannis, there's KD, there's Kawhi. It looks like Luka has put his name into the ballot for next one up after LeBron finally takes a step back. And he definitely has a good case. And what I said in my last video, please, if you have not seen my last video, watch it right now, because I'm about to spoil it. With Luka trying to be an MVP, he was my pick for MVP this year, this upcoming season. It's gonna be a big staple, and obviously when LeBron beat Giannis, when LeBron beat Kawhi and the Clippers, those were really tough games, and they beat them, and it really sort of catapulted his MVP case a lot more than what it probably should have been for the MVP case against Giannis. So if Luka beats LeBron on Christmas Day, that's going to be in a lot of voters' minds for the rest of the year. So that's a very big game for Dallas as well. Obviously, Dallas trying to be championship contenders, trying to build this sort of franchise back up from where it used to be with KP and Luka and the squad they put together. It's a good measuring stick for how well they're going to be this year. Next up on the list are the Denver Nuggets. And for the Denver Nuggets, it's February 4th against the LA Lakers. Obviously, rematch of the Western Conference Finals. And I do think that this is probably, their most important game of the season. I would say either them, I would say either the Clippers, or I would say either the Portland is a very good team, no doubt about it, but they're always like the 5th team out of the conversation. So, proving it against the Lakers on February 4th, will be a good stepping stone and measurement to see how good they are this year, and going up against the team that they lost to in the Western Conference Finals last year. Next team up are the Detroit Pistons, and their game is apparently February 1st against the Denver Nuggets, because they have Jeremy Grant now. So I guess this could be somewhat of a revenge game. Oh, you guys didn't want to pay me, or oh, this was my old team, I'll go show them how good I am now, sort of thing. But I don't think the Nuggets and Jeremy Grant sort of had that relationship, so I don't really think this matches up extremely well. I definitely want to see it to see what happens, but also because Blake Griffin was in a lot of trade talks for the Denver Nuggets over the offseason, and I bet he wishes he was traded on that team, so maybe he's going to show the Denver Nuggets what they missed out on for not trading for. So I think this is also a pretty cool one. Also Mason Plumlee is on Detroit as well, so you have the Jeremy Grant story, you have the Blake Griffin story, and you have the Mason Plumlee story, so you have 3 players who are very much connected with the Denver Nuggets the past season. So next up are the Golden State Warriors, and theirs are December 22nd. Golden State Warriors, Brooklyn Nets. You have KD versus the Warriors, their first time ever. I am very much watching this game. It is the first game of the season first day of the season, December 22nd, and wow, that's going to be such a cool game. Obviously, I think the Nets maybe have a little bit of an edge over the Warriors talent-wise, but play-style-wise and things like that, they may have it more figured out, and it's going to be a very competitive game. Don't get me wrong, I don't think this is going to be a blowout game, but it can turn into that. I think the Nets definitely may have their number, and I think the Warriors will lose, but I think it's going to be a very fun game to watch, very, very, very much. You also have the Kyrie versus Curry sort of game going on now. That's always a fun matchup, Kyrie and Curry. That's always a fun one. Yeah, but obviously with the Warriors not having Klay Thompson anymore, that's definitely a tough take, a tough blow. So next up we have the Houston Rockets and the Washington Wizards. They clumped them together because on January 26th, the Washington Wizards face the Houston Rockets. Now that is going to be a very good game. Russell Westbrook doesn't really have the best relationship against his exes. KD, Paul George is an okay one, but Paul George said, I want to stay in OKC for the rest of my career. Let's get a championship, and then dipped. Probably not very friendly with him anymore, but now when James Harden said, yeah, I don't want to play here anymore, and Russell Westbrook's like, I don't want to play here anymore, and they both sort of just peaced out and left. So they're apparently still very close, but we're definitely going to see on that night when it gets very tense and it's a close game, it's competitive, true colors will come out and we'll see what really happens. I think that's going to be a very competitive game. I think James Harden's going to have to go off for them to even be competitive in that game, because I think the Wizards are very good this year. They have Bradley Beal, they have Troy Brown Jr., Rui Hachimura, they have Thomas Bryant. I think that's his first name, Thomas, but they have Bryant. Their center, obviously Russell Westbrook. That's a very good team for an Eastern Conference team. The Rockets are definitely down a lot of people, but they still have James Harden, and they still have John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Christian Wood. They're not a bad team, so very competitive, very fun to watch. Next up are the Indiana Pacers. For the Pacers, their game is December 27th versus the Boston Celtics. Dang, that's pretty interesting. I wouldn't really know why. I know Boston and Indiana were in a lot of trade talks over the entire season, basically trying to get Miles Turner on that team, and maybe getting Brogdon, and maybe trading Gordon Hayward, maybe trading Kemba. Like, there are a lot of different trade packages that I've seen over the entire season, so maybe that's why, but I'm not really sure why else it would be Boston. I'm not sure, but definitely the Pacers would need to have a very good staple game, and I think Boston would be a very good example, or another team to sort of make an example of this, saying, hey, we're not a team, we're not rebuilding, we have a great So, man, do I believe that that is the most important matchup of the year again? Honestly, it was definitely a more important sort of storyline last season because it was the first season. This time it feels kind of overdone. You know, it feels like it happens all the time. They played each other in the preseason as well, so I'll agree with it. I think, yes, it's obviously a very important game because they're both in the same conference, in the same division. Kawhi, LeBron, this sort of ordeal with Montrezl Harrell, Patrick Beverley, and that whole team, so I think it is a very important game, and I think I will pick it for probably the most important one, but obviously I think, you know, the Lakers versus the Bucks will be a very important game. The Lakers versus the Nets will be a very important game. I think the Clippers versus Denver will be a very important game. So there's still a lot of different pieces to the puzzle that I think are very good for these choices. Next up we have the Memphis Grizzlies, and for the Memphis Grizzlies it's February 6th versus the Pelicans. So I'm assuming this is probably a who's finally going to break through the playoff berth this year. Obviously, both of the teams are barely missing the playoffs last year to Portland. But also, you got Ja Morant, you got Zion Williamson. So that's also a very big storyline. So I could definitely see this being a very important game for the Memphis Grizzlies because obviously if you beat this team, you know, you're putting them in their place. You're saying, hey, we're the true playoff team. Or the Pelicans are saying, hey, we're the true playoff team, you know. And also the Ja Morant versus Zion Williamson debate is still going on with who should have won Rookie of the Year, who's the better rookie, who's the better pick, who's the safer pick. I think this is a very, very cool matchup. I think it would be very, very, very cool. Man, I should probably pick who I think would win these matchups, but I don't think I'll save that for your guys' own imagination and stuff. Next up, we have the Miami Heat, and the Miami Heat play the Milwaukee Bucks December 29th. So that is their pick for their most important game. Obviously with Miami, definitely was a very good and tough out in last year's bubble playoffs, but there are a lot of people, maybe even including myself, who thinks that if there wasn't a bubble and it was still a normal NBA season, Miami would have not made the NBA Finals, and that is very possible. But this game against the Milwaukee Bucks on December 29th, very early on in the season, will truly prove that they are the better of the teams. They are still the true Eastern Conference champions, no matter if it was in the bubble or not. For the Milwaukee Bucks up next, their most important game apparently is January 21st against the LA Lakers. I guess for every team you can say the LA Lakers because they won the championship, but I think this is a good one. I think a better option, in my opinion, would be the Brooklyn Nets because we all know Brooklyn is probably, and a lot of people's choices, to be the second, maybe even first team all around to make it out of the East and be in the finals. And for Milwaukee to beat that team in the regular season to say, hey, sit down, y'all wait your turn. We are still the best team in the East. We had the best record last year. We had the two-time MVP of the league, and I think that'd make more sense. But obviously, with Milwaukee having championship aspirations, trying to cling on to Giannis as long as he's in that organization, beating the defending champs will be very important to them. So for the Minnesota Timberwolves, their most important game apparently is January 3rd versus the Denver Nuggets. Wow. I mean, they play in the same division, obviously the Northwest Division, but I don't think this is the most important game to them. I think, in my opinion, the most important game for them would be Minnesota versus the Phoenix Suns, because A, the Devin Booker sort of storyline between Devin Booker and how Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell really want Booker on their team. Minnesota didn't make the trade for Booker and the number one pick, so maybe that could be like, hey man, we're going to beat you because you didn't want to join our team because you think we suck. Well, we're going to beat you on this night. I think that'd be pretty cool. But also, because, I had another reason why. Yeah, for Minnesota, well, they are also two teams that obviously didn't make the playoffs last year, and they're trying their best to sort of make that sort of, again, punch their ticket into the playoff spot to show that they are true contenders, to show they can really make a good playoff run. Beating the other team, who also has that same storyline, will be it's not as though he wouldn't have any competition for that mantle. Oh, so they're trying to say that Zion versus Luka to be the next one up for after LeBron gets off. I know that obviously Giannis is the best player at that sort of next one up title, because obviously he's a two-time MVP. But as for the face of the league, obviously we all know that Zion is, he's coming in with a lot of hype, and he can definitely be that next guy for sure. So I can see this being a very cool game to watch. Obviously Zion and Luka, who will be the next face of the league sort of conversation, but I still think for the Pelicans it's going to be Charlotte. That game against LaMelo Ball and Lonzo Ball is going to be such a televised game. The game versus Memphis, I think, is even a more important game. Beating out a team who almost made the playoffs last year, showing your dominance over that team, saying, hey, we are the next young team up in the Western Conference, not you. So I think I'd actually rather pick those games over this Dallas Maverick one, but I get it, they're trying to pick something different, so that kind of makes sense, so it's not a bad one. Next up, we have the New York Knicks, and their biggest matchup of the year is January 13th against the Brooklyn Nets. It's funny they would pick this game because they're going to get absolutely blown out, but obviously the Battle of New York Knicks are starting to become a little bit nicer looking. They have Obi Toppin, they have somewhat of a better sort of lineup, sort of direction, which is really good. Their young players are developing a lot better. This is RJ Barrett's second year on the team. Richard Robinson looks really nice, and they could definitely maybe squeeze a down game from the Nets if they're playing really bad. So I think this probably is their most important game, is playing a game like this, or again playing a game against like Detroit or I don't know, the Thunder or Cleveland, to say, hey, we're not the worst team in the league, you are. Next up we have the Oklahoma City Thunder, and their most important game apparently is January 27th against, you guessed it, the Phoenix Suns. Chris Paul versus his old team versus his old protege, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think this is actually a really cool storyline. I do think that a hyped up, amped up, adrenaline running Thunder team could probably beat this Suns team if they were caught off guard, and that's probably going to be their sort of saying for the entire year. They could definitely catch a lot of teams sleeping on them off guard. They're still a tough out. They still have Shai. They have Al Horford, who's a very savvy veteran. They have some pieces that are very young and gung-ho and ready to run and do their thing. So I could see this being actually a very fun game to watch. Next up are the Orlando Magic, and their most important game apparently is December 31st against the Philadelphia 76ers. Interesting. Oh, Markelle Fultz versus the 76ers, I'm assuming is what it's playing off of. Definitely showing that Markelle Fultz can beat them would be a very good punch to the gut to the 76ers, who basically gave up on Markelle Fultz, which was very sad, but it was definitely what should have happened for Markelle. I'm very happy where he is in Orlando, and I pray he does not sort of get, spot taken by Cole Anthony, sorry. I'm very much intrigued to see how that sort of pairing goes well, because I really do like Markelle at that point guard position for them. For the Philadelphia 76ers, you can 10,000% already guess this one. I'll leave you to it. You're correct. It is January 20th. Philadelphia versus Boston. It seems like every year Boston has Philly's number every single year, and this will be obviously a good measurement and stepping stone to how they would face off against each other in the playoffs. So this is definitely for sure the best one. It says here, despite the Sixers going 3-1 against a division foe in the regular season, Boston swept Philadelphia in the first round of the postseason. So you can't take these games too seriously, but in only a 72-game, very short season, these games are going to be very important. So I think they're going to take these games a little bit more serious. And again, it'll be a good measurement to see how they would face off against each other in the playoffs. Next up are the Timberwolves and the Pistons. The Pistons were the team, no one could get over. And for Portland, it's the Golden State Warriors because obviously they are the best team, and they were the best team of the decade. And Portland was always right there, and they always sort of found themselves going up against the Warriors every single year and never getting past them. Same thing with the Houston Rockets. It's basically the same story. So I think now with sadly what's happened to the Warriors and what has happened to Portland and their new acquisitions, I think this will be a very good sort of finally the Portland Trailblazers can not worry about the Golden State Warriors anymore and sort of be like, whew, we are the better team now. We can just play our game and beat them. But on the flip side, they could definitely play this game and still lose because they're Portland and they always play very bad against the Warriors, it seems like. So next up we have the Sacramento Kings, and their most important one is January 17th, New Orleans. Kings versus New Orleans. So the Kings were obviously a team, again, in the bubble last year who did have a chance to make the playoffs, but didn't make the cut, just like the rest of them. So I think them beating a team like the Pelicans would make a lot of sense because I think, maybe still think they can make the playoffs this year. I'm not entirely sure how much they believe that, but they were in the runnings last year, and a very young team as well, just like the Pelicans, just like the Phoenix Suns, just like the Memphis Grizzlies. So I think them beating any one of those teams will be a very important game for them. So I think any one of them would have been a good. Next up are the San Antonio Spurs, and for them it's January 5th versus the LA Clippers. And I'm assuming that's only because of Kawhi Leonard, which I don't think that really matters to Kawhi anymore, and I don't think it matters to the Spurs anymore. So I don't think I'm going to pick that as my pick. It says 2 full seasons have passed since Kawhi Leonard demanded and received a trade from San Antonio. Leonard has since spurred another team, this time in free agency. Oh, they're talking about the Raptors. I don't think that's the biggest matchup for the Spurs. I wouldn't even know what would be. I don't think they have bad blood against any team. I don't think they have anything to prove. I mean, they're going to be a bad team. They're going to be a lottery team. So I'm not really entirely sure. I don't think I could even pick one, but I don't think it's this one. I don't think this is right at all. I don't think Kawhi really cares about the Spurs anymore. I don't think the Spurs really care about Kawhi anymore. Maybe they do. I'm just not in tune with the Spurs fans. Next up, we have the Toronto Raptors, and for them, it's February 5th versus the Brooklyn Nets. Very interesting. It says despite the loss of Kawhi Leonard to the Clippers, the Toronto Raptors still ran away with the Atlantic Division title, finishing 5 games ahead of the Boston Celtics in the regular season, with a new challenger on the scene. Although thanks to the return of the return of Kyrie Irving and the debut of Kevin Durant for the Nets. I guess this is sort of like a put you in your place type of game, maybe. I don't think this is a good pick. In my opinion, it would probably be the Boston Celtics because a lot of people thought that Toronto should have beaten Boston in the playoffs last year. They probably had a very good chance. They definitely won a very good amount of games against them. They obviously had that crazy buzzer beater with OG Anunoby, so I think that's a little bit of a rivalry, sort of starting to creating some sparks and flashes of rivalry, so I think that's a good one as well. I think that would be my pick, the Boston Celtics. And the last team is the Utah Jazz, and their most important game of the NBA season this upcoming year, January 17th, versus the Denver Nuggets. Interesting. Oh, obviously, for some reason I totally forgot that they played each other in the playoffs and had one of the craziest playoff series that I've seen in a very long time. Obviously, playing them, showing them that the 3-1 loss was a fluke, showing that the Donovan Mitchell versus Jamal Murray games that they had back and forth, that Donovan Mitchell is the better player, and the Rudy Gobert, Jokic center sort of rundown against each other is also a very fun thing to watch. So I will say this is a very important matchup for them. Is it the most? I think yes. I think that playoff series he had last year, with how important that was for Donovan Mitchell, and Donovan Mitchell sort of showing his flashes of superstardom and earning himself that max contract, I think that is maybe their most important game. seedings and standings for next year for both East and West. Make sure you drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel.